History is filled with crossroads moments where a single decision could have changed the course of the world. One of the most chilling of these was the so-called Madagascar Plan. In reality, Nazi Germany never put it into action. But what if they had? Today we will discuss an alternate history that explores what might have happened had the Germans implemented their Madagascar Plan for the Jewish people. Keep in mind that this is just one interpretation of what may have occurred. At the end of the day, it's merely speculation. With that perspective in mind, let's step into a darker version of history, one where the Madagascar Plan was carried out, and the idea of a Jewish homeland took root not in Israel, but on the island of Madagascar. When France fell to the Germans in 1940, Churchill wanted to prevent the French naval fleet from falling into Germany's hands. In a controversial move, Churchill ordered strikes on the French fleet in North Africa to neutralize them. Churchill was heavily criticized for this, as the French had not yet done anything to attack their former ally. In this alternate timeline, Churchill decides to call off the attack on the French fleet, a move he would regret, as the Germans would make use of the French Navy and merchant fleet to execute their Madagascar Plan. The Royal Navy now had to grapple with both the Italian and French navies that were operating in the Mediterranean. Germany gained control of France and its colonial empire. The Vichy regime would become complicit, aiding the Germans with deportations. By early 1941, ships packed with Jewish families leave the south of France and arrive to the ports like Oran and Algiers. From there, they were transferred to railcars and sent west. This was primarily done to avoid the Royal Navy at Gibraltar. From there, they are loaded onto French merchant liners that were stripped of amenities and packed with thousands per voyage. From there, a fleet of the ships would sail around south along the West African coast. They would be escorted by French or Italian destroyers. This route was the only option, as the British still controlled the Suez Canal. The journeys are hellish. Overcrowding breeds typhus and dysentery. Malnutrition and storms take their toll. By the time ships reach Madagascar, about 20% of the prisoners were dead. On arrival, survivors were marched into hastily built camps along the coasts. The island, already home to millions of the native Malagasy people, had little infrastructure to absorb the population influx. By the end of 1942, nearly 1.2 million Jews have been deported. The Nazis herald it as proof that Europe has been cleansed. The French colonial authorities are utilized by the Germans to keep order in Madagascar, while the SS operated the camps. The prisoners were worked to death in the brutal conditions of mines. Diseases like malaria and yellow fever devastated the Jewish people, who had no immunity. Mosquitoes ravaged the camps, cutting down tens of thousands within weeks. Even the German garrison suffered. Supplies of quinine were quickly depleted as the guards grappled with the effects of malaria. The population influx overwhelms local agriculture, leading to famine and starvation across the island. Dispossessed, resentful, and starving, the Malagasy insurgents begin striking SS posts and convoys. Some Jews escape and join them. By mid-1943, nearly half of the deportees are dead. Madagascar is an island of death. The SS used prisoner labor to construct massive incinerators to dispose of corpses. The Allied advance in North Africa and South Atlantic patrols make convoys increasingly vulnerable. Axis shipping losses mount. Disease continued to devastate the SS guards. It was quickly becoming clear to Berlin that the Madagascar Plan was no longer sustainable. By late 1943, the deportations were halted. Roughly 1.5 million Jews had been sent to Madagascar. Approximately 900,000 remained alive. For the Nazi leadership, Madagascar had failed, and exile had not achieved their desired goals. This would be the point in our alternate timeline when the Nazis determined that they would proceed with the final solution on European soil. Camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor, smaller in this timeline until now, are expanded rapidly. Gas chambers and crematoria begin operating at full capacity. Mass killings start later than in our reality, but proceed with equal ruthlessness. Jews in Hungary, Poland, and the occupied Soviet Union are rounded up and sent to death camps. Within a year, millions more perish. Thus, the Holocaust in this alternate history comes in two phases. The Madagascar Holocaust, one of exile, disease, brutal labor, and famine. Then a transition to Europe. This saw an industrialized extermination program. By the war's end, Jewish losses are still in the millions. The methods differ. The timeline shifts, but the destruction is comparable. Allied forces from South Africa and East Africa land in Madagascar in an amphibious invasion in May of 1945. What they encounter is pure devastation. Camps were littered with mass graves, many dug for malaria victims. Survivors were like walking skeletons, many infected with a variety of tropical diseases. The SS garrison on the island gave little pushback, as their numbers had felt the same devastation of widespread disease. The German field hospital was filled to the brim with sick guards. Out of 1.5 million deported Jews, approximately 600,000 survive. Madagascar would go on to become one of the powerful symbols of the Holocaust and World War II. It becomes a symbol of genocide by neglect, a place where the Nazis let nature itself become executioner. With Nazi Germany defeated, global attention shifts to Jewish survivors. In this timeline, the French are seen as more complicit in aiding the Nazis. Therefore, they are immediately stripped of their Madagascar colony by the Allies. The colony was seen as a settlement option for the hundreds of thousands of Jewish refugees being kept in their liberated camps in Europe. The Allies made use of captured Axis shipping to create a convoy that traveled from the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal and into the Indian Ocean. British and American forces arrive as peacekeeping forces shortly after the Japanese surrender. Medical personnel flood into the island, administering aid to the many still suffering from tropical disease and starvation. Millions of tons of aid were shipped to Madagascar. It included surplus Lend-Lease aid that included medical supplies, food, fuel, and war material courtesy of Uncle Sam. Survivors from Poland, Germany, and displaced persons camps flood into Madagascar. After the devastation of the war, many nations, including the United States, pushed for a permanent homeland for the Jewish people who had been devastated by the war. While many Zionist leaders of the time had backed a homeland in Palestine, that ultimately does not occur in this timeline. Instead, the Western Allies and UN gravitate toward Madagascar as the solution. 35,000 French citizens still lived on the island. Many had business interests in the mining and agricultural sectors. The majority of French citizens lived around the coastal towns. They were given the options of returning to France, immigrating to another French colony in Africa, or they could simply elect to continue living on the island. The Malagasy reaction to this population influx was initially confusion and suspicion. Some Malagasy welcomed the new investment in infrastructure, but nationalist groups warned, one colonizer leaves, another enters. In 1947, a UN resolution passed narrowly in favor of the Madagascar Partition Plan. The island would be divided into two states, a Jewish homeland consisting of the coastal provinces in the northeast and southern coasts, while a Malagasy Republic would be established in the central and southern highlands, with the Mahajanga region preserving their lifeline to the sea. On May 14, 1948, Jewish leaders proclaimed the independence of what they would call Medinat Ophir. Medinat is Hebrew for state or nation. Ophir was a biblical place, mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, renowned as a distant land of great wealth, particularly gold and precious goods. King Solomon's ships supposedly brought back treasures from Ophir. The coastal city of Tomasina would officially be renamed Yerushalayim Hadasha, or New Jerusalem. Immigration from Europe had been completed at this point. Now, new ships that arrived came from a variety of Middle Eastern nations, including the newly nation of Palestine. The following day, the Malagasy Republic declared its sovereignty in Antananarivo. Today's episode was meant to specifically cover the possibility of the Madagascar Plan. I plan on making a follow-up episode that covers the Cold War Madagascar. So, if you enjoyed this alternate history scenario, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the Alternate History Archives channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.